This is Timothy Carroll from Carroll Consultancy Group, and we have back again our legendary health expert, Matt Walden, osteopath, naturopath, works for some of the best football teams in the world, and is traveling the world lecturing on osteopathy and health. Has a fabulous podcast. What's the name of your podcast again, Matt?
It's FC2O, as in from chaos to order.
That's right. In this COVID-19 world that we're in, with so much stresses going on at home, etc., it seems to me, like in my direct experience, that in May there is this overload, and that's the only way that I could describe it personally for myself, was an overload of stress which started to weigh on me, and that's how I can describe it. So can you talk about stress load a little bit, because that's kind of how it felt, and I know that when the negative stresses add up, they create a stress load. Have a chat to me about
Absolutely. So each of these stresses is distinct of its own, but they're all impacting on your entire system, which is a harmonic integrated system. So you can't really have any of those stresses without it impacting on everything. So if you have a physical stressor like exercise, well, it shuts down your digestion, it increases your cortisol, which is your stress hormone, and it diverts blood to your periphery, let's say, just as a sort of generic response. But the same thing, if psychologically you're stressed because you're worried that you're going to get COVID, or you're worried that someone you know is going to get COVID and they're going to end up on a respirator, and you not fantasize is probably the wrong word, but you imagine yourself into that situation. Catastrophize is probably a good word for that. Then you get exactly the same physiological response. So your body will again shut down your digestion. It will divert blood to your periphery. It will make you get a dry mouth and sweaty palms and all the normal stuff that's associated with being nervous or stressed.
The unconscious mind does not know the difference between an imagined experience and a real experience.
Exactly. So it doesn't know the difference between a lion walking into the room and you walking into an auditorium to speak to 100 people. It's exactly the same physiological response, or a deadline at work, or financial stress or relationship stress. Your body has the same response to all of those things. And essentially what it does is it takes the body catabolic, which means it takes it into a tissue breakdown state, not a rebuilding, regenerative growth state. And it increases inflammation. And one of the things that we know about COVID, and in fact about pretty much any disease, is that the more inflamed you are, the more likely you are to get it. There's no doubt about that, because one of the things that stress does is it shuts down the immune system.
So what sort of symptoms are we looking at when someone has a high stress load on their system? What sort of symptoms, other than inflammation and etc. that you just mentioned, can we start to see? So if someone's listening to this now and they go, wow, I've got these symptoms, therefore I'm starting to have a high stress load, and then we can have a discussion about what are some of the treatments for that. But let's identify some of the symptoms.
Sure. Well, so quite often there's changes in nutritional habits, because you're feeling perhaps like you're not sleeping so well. So maybe you have a little bit more caffeine in the morning. You feel like you need a bit more energy. So you might not consciously, but quite unconsciously reach for a bit more sugar-based foods, sugar-based cereals or sweet-based pastries, those kinds of things. You'll find that when people are stressed out, they often can't get to sleep. And so there's this phrase, tired but wired, so their body feels tired, but their mind's racing. That's a classic sign that they are overstressed.
Right.
An inability to repair or recover. So, if for example, you're used to, digging the garden or going for a surf or going for a run, and normally the next day you go again, or a couple of days later you go again, but you're just feeling exhausted from it. Or going to the gym is another one, you're just not recovering from a workout. It's taking 2, 3, 4, 5 days instead of 1 day. Obviously, it depends how hard you're working out and other factors as well, your age and so on, your nutrition. But generally speaking, with physical activities, you should be recovered generally within 48 to 72 hours. So if you're finding it's taking longer than that to recover, then that's nearly always a sign that your body is overburdened and overstressed. And so, you know, I think you started out this little section by asking about physiological load, and I've given a few physical examples, but really, you know, it doesn't matter which of those 6 stresses it is, whether it's thermal, chemical, nutritional, psychological, electromagnetic, or physical. Any of those things, if you're getting them in too much quantity, then it just raises the overall stress level in the body, and it sends that body into a fight-flight state.
Right. Amazing. Yeah. So let's then have a look at some of the treatments that you treat your clients with that come in with, you know, severe fatigue or, you know, high levels of stress. When you do a health assessment on them, and it shows indicators where they're in the red, where their system is overloaded. Then what sort of recommendations do you have for, you know, reducing stressors, you know, in those 6 areas? How do you move forward and keep those in balance so that we, you know, because I understand that stress, from what I've learned, stress builds up over time. So what do you do to you know, bring it back into balance and release it from the mind and body?
Sure. Well, so possibly one of the quickest ways to release stress is through breath work.
Right.
And you know, I nearly said breathing, but I think that instantly people just switch off and go, well, I breathe anyway. You know, the point is that when we're stressed, we tend to develop an altered breathing pattern. So we tend to breathe through our mouth. We tend to breathe more in the chest than down into the abdomen. And so essentially what we're doing is we're using accessory muscles to breathe. And what that does is it means we get air into the lungs, but we get it mainly into the upper parts of the lungs, where we've got more fight-flight receptors. So we've got sensory receptors, which are called sympathetic receptors. And they essentially take your physiology into a fight-flight state. So when we breathe through the mouth or using the chest muscles, then we tend to go into this fight-flight state. When we breathe through the nose and we use the diaphragm to draw the air in, and you should see the belly expand as you use the diaphragm and back up, then what that does, it draws the air deeper down into the lungs. And in these lower lobes of the lungs, down here, you've got parasympathetic receptors, which are your rest and digest receptors. So they calm you down, they bring your nervous system down to a rest and digest state, which is the opposite of the fight-flight state. So then that has an impact on your hormonal system. It improves your digestion, it calms the mind. But the interesting thing about breathing is that it's driven by your psyche. You know, it's driven, as you mentioned earlier, by the unconscious, what's going on unconsciously. So your anxieties, your worries, your things like, you know, food intolerances, as we said earlier, they can raise the sympathetic or the fight-flight levels in the body. And so, you know, really any combination of stressors will serve to increase the fight-flight, which increases the respiratory rate. And as the respiratory rate goes up, so you're more moving towards a state of anxiety, and you're moving towards the ultimate sort of endpoint of that is a panic attack.
Right.
But so then the anxiety itself increases the breathing rate, so you can get caught in a vicious cycle. You know, so you've got anxiety creates an increased breathing rate creates more anxiety, and you get caught in this state. So you just stay in a fight-flight state. So that's why to just stop, lay down or find a quiet place, do some deep abdominal breathing through the nose. That's a great way to start in terms of lowering the stress levels, which then lowers the anxiety and so on. But, you know, if the anxiety is strong enough, like if you're really panicked about the COVID-19 situation, it doesn't really matter how much you try and change your breathing, it's going to come back until you address that. And that's where obviously coaching with someone like yourself is so valuable.
Got it. So the last session I had online was with William Trubridge, the world record free diver. And, you know, we were talking about productivity and how to be super present. And so, you know, breath work is something that he's, you know, mastered, to be able to hold his breath, and you know, he's a bit of a yogi in regards to stilling his mind and becoming super present. So I think, you know, William was also discussing how important it is to meditate. And, you know, when you look at the science around meditation, from the universities around the world, they've found that it is one of the number one things that you can actually do to release stress from the physiology. And there are many health benefits from it. So meditation, qigong, tai chi, yoga, those things must also be massive in regards to reducing the stress load and actually releasing it from the mind and body.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've been involved in writing for a medical journal for I don't know, about 15 years now, and it's been fascinating to see how there's been this gradual increase of interest in things like Tai Chi and Qigong, and finding out how beneficial they are physically, mentally, emotionally, and so on. And as you say, huge swathes of research now behind it all. And one of the things I would just point out is if you've got someone listening who's interested in research, they often will use the term mindfulness rather than meditation, just because they're trying to, you know, being scientists, they're trying to move away from the kind of religious connotations, I suppose, or spiritual connotations, and towards more of a something that they find more palatable. So if you're looking up research papers, look them up on mindfulness, and you'll find that there's huge amounts of research there. And it's one of the most potent tools for helping people with anxiety, for helping people with chronic pain or persistent pain. It's just phenomenal, much more effective than pretty much any medical drug or other intervention.
Excellent, mate. Excellent. So ultimately, what I'm getting is that in those 6 areas that you've mentioned, if we can find a balance and assess ourselves on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being that we're excessive in that area, too less or too little. You know, like 10 being that you're excessive, and 1 being that you're little, too low in that area. Then if we can find a balance and move into the middle around 4, 5, and 6. Then by, you know, stopping overdoing it or increasing underdoing it, then that's going to really help us to, you know, to manage and come into balance in those 6 areas.
Absolutely.
Is there anything that you can recommend in regards to, do you have any literature people could read, for example, about the stressors and how to bring them into balance?
Sure. There's
some textbook that people go to.
Yeah, definitely. Where I'd probably go to is Paul Chek's book, How to Eat, Move and Be Healthy. It's you know, as the title says, you know, it helps on the nutritional side. So it's how to eat. So that's the nutritional stressor covered. Move, so that's the physical stressors covered. And being healthy, of course, incorporates a holistic view of life. So it's not just about exercising, you know, going out for a regular run or something. It's about eating well. It's about sleeping well, which he covers in his sleep chapter. It's about being able to digest what you eat, you know, so he's got a digestive chapter explaining what to look for there and how to adapt your diet. He's got a series of exercises, which he calls zone exercises, which are essentially kind of mindfulness type breath-based exercises. So, you know, there's a relatively affordable resource there. I think they're about $20, something like that.
Amazing.
And available from Amazon. I would say in terms of your bang for your buck, that covers everything you need to know, and also explains stress really well, you know.
Excellent.
So and it's one of the things he was very careful about doing was creating a book that's very visual, you know, so it's not loads and loads of text. There's lots of nice mind maps and diagrams and imagery, so it's very easy to digest and to read.
Great stuff. So, you know, here at Carroll Consultancy, we use your services to assess, you know, our top end executive leaders. And so we always run those leaders through a health assessment. And I think it would be awesome for you to just touch on what that is and what the results are from that. Because I think that would also be an excellent resource for people to be able to access, to get a big picture look and the details in regards to all of the systems running physiologically and mentally within the body, and finding out where the stress load is. So, you know, I understand that if you're in the green zone, the stress load is low. If you're in the orange zone, you're creeping up. And if you're in the red zone, then you need to do something about it, right? So maybe you can just introduce that.
Yeah, sure. So we use an online screening tool called a health appraisal questionnaire. And essentially what that does, as you said, it assesses the stress on 28 different organ and glandular systems in the body. So essentially, I would say it takes most people about 30 minutes to go through the questionnaire, because it's quite comprehensive, obviously, to screen 28 different organ and glandular systems. But what it then does is it gives you a graphical kind of explanation for how much stress is on each of those systems, as well as an overall stress score. So if a lot of your systems are scoring in the red, which is kind of, you know, the red of the traffic light, if you like, it's like, okay, we need to ease back here and slow down. Well, then your overall stress score is likely to be in the red. But you might have, for most people, they get 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 in the red, and a few in the orange and a few in the green. And so that means their overall score is in the orange. And again, you know, for some people, they're more towards the green end. So that's fantastic. But almost invariably, you'll find there'll be 1 or 2 systems that people could do with addressing. So it's just, what it does is, rather than just saying, oh, you know, you're stressed, you need to do some breathing exercises, it's more of a case of saying, okay, so you've got some stress in your life, you're feeling stressed. Let's find out which parts of your system are most stressed, so that we can be more targeted in our approach.
Great. So, yeah. So that's the big picture is that we can immediately take care of our stress with breath, with meditation, with yoga, proven strategies, right? And then if you want more information, you can go and read up on Paul Chek's book, Eat, Move, and Be Healthy. Awesome textbook. And then if you really want to find out what's going on within your system, you can fill out the health appraisal questionnaire with Matt, and he can give you a full report on that, and recommendations on how to deal with stress. And I think those resources are just awesome, because there's so many people out there hitting the wall right now, as well as doing it tough, working from home, balancing families, balancing work, balancing their kids. And so, yeah, super important to be able to give them some resources. And that's why I wanted you to come back on today, Matt. You've explained what is negative stress and positive stress, why it's important to get over that, and how do you actually do that. So it's been super valuable. Thank you so much, mate.
That's a pleasure. I was going to mention, I've also got a video on how to do Tai Chi, a basic form of Tai Chi.
Oh, great.
I normally sell just for a small amount of money, a few pounds. But I've got it on my Vimeo channel currently for free, because I thought it was something I could give back during the COVID crisis to help lower people's stress levels. So, I can provide the link to you, and you can share that if you like.
That's great. Definitely. And we'll definitely do that. We'll put this on the video. And where can they find you? It's matt@mattwalden.com, isn't it?
That's the email, yeah. And then obviously the website is mattwalden.com. Yeah,
that's correct.
Awesome. Matt with 2 T's and Walden with 2 L's. Yeah.
Excellent. Wonderful, Matt. Thank you very much for coming on our Snack Bite training series again. And
that's a pleasure.
We'll look forward to having you on again in the future. Stress, we now know what to do. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, thanks.
Take care, mate.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.